Hi there. Welcome to the Coach Craig Kenneth Show.
I'm Coach Victoria.
And I'm Coach Craig Kenneth. And this is a caller-driven show. And today we have a caller with us. We're going to call her Danielle, and she's in her early 30s. Now, Danielle has been in a relationship for a while, but she's dealing with some challenging behaviors from her partner. So she's going to talk to us about what it's like being with an avoidant partner, the struggles she's had, and the struggles she's currently having. Danielle, can you hear us?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you today. Um, can you talk to us a little bit about what's been going on for you?
Yeah, sure, no worries. So I am Danielle. I'm in a just going on a year and a half relationship with a new-ish partner who is a dismissive avoidant. I came out of a very long marriage and I have quite a few children. So I am entering the dating scene. I was entering the dating scene as someone who had not experienced the current world that we live in, which is very much all the different dating platforms, all of the different chasing, all that experience that I didn't know what I was walking into really.
And
Um,
and dating for the first time with kids.
yes, that is terrifying. It's very, very different. And I had an advantage in that I kind of can't really hide who I am. I had to just upfront at the very beginning tell people that I had quite a few children because there's no point in telling them later. So it's kind of take it or leave it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I met this man, and after quite a few other relationships past my marriage, I dated quite a few men that were unfortunately not good choices, and they all cheated on me.
Wow.
And my ex-husband also cheated on me. So imagine walking into a relationship like that with an avoidant who I didn't know was an avoidant either because I hadn't learned anything about uh, personality types and
Attachment
anxious
theory.
attachments and any of that stuff until I ended up calling your show. Um, so I spoke to you at the very beginning of my relationship, I think, at the
Mhm.
3 to 4 month mark when things started to change. And I noticed quite a lot of pulling away, did the whole chasing, why don't you want me? What's wrong with me? Kind of thing. And I
Now, let
stumbled
me
onto your
pause.
show.
Let me pause you for a moment there. If you're
Yeah.
not too familiar with attachment theory, which we talk about extensively on the channel,
Mhm.
attachment theory is, it looks at that people have different needs in their relationships, and it often stems from their very early childhood, the first 3 or 4 years of their life with their parents, and we attach and bond differently based on how much love and affection and attention we get, and those things tend to come out in our romantic relationships as an adult. So avoidant partners tend to need a lot of space. They often shut down. They don't communicate as well. And if they do, it's kind of a brief, it's like matter of fact thing. Like, you don't take me
Mhm.
to the beach that much. And then they break up with you 6 months later because you didn't go to the beach. And like, but I told you that one time. Whereas an anxious person would be telling you constantly, please, let's go to the beach. I really love going to the beach with you. I want to go to the beach. And so we communicate differently, and we have different amounts of space and closeness that we like in our relationships.
I want to ask, what makes you think that the person that you're dating now is more avoidant? What are some of those traits that you see that are some of those avoidant tendencies?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. Um, Whenever we have an argument, not really even an argument, more of a discussion where he feels uncomfortable, he will often get up and leave the room. He won't say anything. He will literally get up and leave. And if I follow him, he will tell me not to, and not very politely, to not follow him and not to speak to him because he
Mm.
immediately has shut down. And I see him, I now that I've learned a little bit more about it, I see the emotional triggers where he's pulling away a little bit, or I will be close to him and he will get up and move, things like that. Um, he also does things like, I don't know if this is just the avoidant part, but it's definitely dismissive avoidant, where he will say what he thinks, and then when you reply, he will look at you blankly and just do a harsh remark or no, or just really cut you down and then just kind of walk off. Um, and so it also kind of, as an anxious person, which I've learnt the hard way, I had to learn that I was definitely anxiously attached. Um, I would automatically chase or be like, please tell me what's wrong, or we just need to communicate. If we
Pushing,
just talk about it,
a
talk, talk,
lot of
talk, talk,
pushing,
talk.
pushing to
Yes,
connect, pushing to repair. And it
yes.
often overwhelms the other person who's shut down or is shutting down.
I also noticed as well that when I communicate with him, when he's being avoidant, he will say things like, we've had this conversation a million times and it's the same thing every time. But
Mhm.
what I'm hearing is that I have spoken to him 7 or 8 times, but he's not given me anything back. And so there's another problem because it's not been resolved. And so all I want to do is fix it. And he thinks, you've now spoken at me. So I don't think we need to address this again. So I don't want to talk. So it's very like, I just like, we don't need to deal with the problem. Like it's already been talked about, but there's no resolution, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Mhm.
like you may have talked about it, but there's nothing coming from
Changing.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's no change, there's no behaviors that are different,
Yeah.
there's no effort that's been, changed. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
But
just
then
been,
if
yeah,
I was
okay,
to
we
go
said
on
it.
about it, if I go on about it again, then I get the dismissive behavior, which is cold and withdrawn, and it's almost a punishment. So then I get scared to talk about it. So we just go about in silence and eggshells. It's awful.
Yes. But now avoidants don't usually do that in the beginning. They
Mhm.
usually come on strong and they look great and wonderful and amazing till you get about 5, 6 months in.
Hmm. Yeah,
Then
I
all of a
hit
sudden,
4 month mark. I didn't get that long. But yeah, it was yeah, so that was the first time, and it wasn't even that we had an argument. I just realized early on, after dating other guys, I was like, I'm really sorry, I don't think this is the right choice. I don't think we should continue. And he chased me very quickly because I did everything technically right according to what I'd learned, and I did the personal growth. So I was okay with walking away at that stage. But then he came back and he did some work on himself and we worked things out. He became better at communicating. Things got better. He started to really commit to the children. And that was a big factor for me because for a while it was just more about our relationship. And then he would kind of shy away from the kids, which I can understand both sides of that. You know, when you're going into a new relationship, you can't just automatically be best friends with the children. It does take a little bit of time, but there was still some sort of absence there. Like he wouldn't sit at the table with us. He
ooh,
wouldn't be involved in conversation. He couldn't handle lots of noise and things. And I had to constantly have these conversations where I would say, this is life with children. This is what it is. It's part of being a family. And he wanted to have a family. So he wanted to have more kids. And I said, I can't have you acting different with your children than you do with my children. It has to be the same. So you have to get used to being part of it. And
yeah,
then
sure.
things got really interesting. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
Sure.
So we got to the year mark, and just before the year mark, actually. And that's when I called you, Craig, because I had been experiencing so many red flags. So he had been going cold, not replying, coming home at weird times, and doing all the things that I'd experienced in other relationships with that were traumatic, um, as cheating. So anxiously, I just assumed that was what he was doing. I started to get really in my head, started to feel like I wanted to check his phone, and I've never checked anyone's phone in my relationships, ever, ever,
Yeah.
ever. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm going crazy. This is hurting me because he's not willing to work on anything and he's just slamming doors or he's just
Ooh,
ignoring me or he's been giving me silent treatment for 4 days and saying that's what he needs. And I got to the point where I said to him, you need to, I think we need to call it and I think you need to move out. So he didn't want to do that. Originally, he said after 2 days, yep, that's fine. And I said, let me know when you found a place. Um, but then he didn't. And it got to a week, and I said, my children are coming back home. I need to know where you're going to go because I don't want them to have to deal with this.
About
Um,
time frame wise, where was this? How long ago? Just out of
uh, how long ago?
this, like
I'd
6 months ago?
say maybe 6 months ago. Yeah. Yeah. So he basically, he was coming over. He said he was going to stay at a different place. He stayed in a hostel or in a like a caravan park, and he was coming over to mow the lawn, and he he kept mowing the lawn. And I said at one point, I was like, I don't need you to mow the lawn, mate. I can do it myself. Like, it's all good. And he's like, no, no, I'll take care of the lawn. It's no problem. And I was like, I don't want you here. I need space. You need to go. And
Yeah.
I
At this
think that
point,
kind of,
had you discovered whether he was cheating or not?
he wasn't cheating. He was going through a lot of depression, and I didn't realize the similarities that came with
Mm.
not really. And I do believe him now that, yeah, he was, because I've seen it again now that I've spent longer with him. I've realized, and I've talked to my brother and a couple of other men in my life, and they've said, when I'm depressed, I can genuinely shut down. Um, and I'm guilty of doing this to my spouse or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that might be a possibility because we have spoken about the cheating thing. And he'd said, I will never, and I have never cheated.
Mm.
And he's like, I just can't help that this is who I am and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you kind of can, but I do understand.
That's true.
You're
You're
making a
right.
choice.
Mhm.
But I mean, that comes as well. Like, when I first called Craig at the very beginning, I didn't have any confidence. So this time when I went around and called him, it was more reassurance that what I needed to do needed to happen. And I've got a lot more confidence now to be able to say, I need to put me and the kids first. Um,
Sure.
yeah, so it kind of got to the point where it had been over a week, almost 2 weeks, and I had neatly packed his stuff and put it by the front door. And I just texted him and said, it's here for you. Let me know when you're coming by to get it.
I think this was around the time where
And
you and I had talked too, right?
yes, this is when I called you. And basically, you were like, you need to put it by the door. And I said, that's really mean, don't you think? And you said, no, he needs to know that you're serious. And um, yeah, it's not going to make sense. It's not going to feel like, it's going to feel like a game to him if he keeps getting the same response where you just take him back, say sorry. And so I was like, okay, I need to do
He
it.
he was also doing some other things that were mixed messages that you may not want to share, which is okay. But he was definitely not just taking the stuff and leaving. He was doing a lot to kind of linger other than just mow the lawn and stuff like
Mm.
that.
Yeah, he'd set up security cameras at the house because we'd been broken into 2 weeks prior.
That's
Oh,
right. I
actually,
forgot. I
sorry, that's
remember that.
wrong. That's wrong. He broke up with me on Valentine's Day.
Mm.
He had said, fine, this is too hard for me. And I said, okay, no worries. So when I said, okay, no worries, he didn't expect me to say that. He was kind of saying, fine, I don't, we should break up. I don't need this. And in the moment I said, that's fine. Let me know where you want to go and all the best. He panicked. It was like I didn't know that he was panicking at the time. And when I told Craig about the cameras, he was like, that is keeping tabs. You need to get the password.
Mm.
Um, because we had security cameras all around the house, but I said to Craig, like, the cameras can hear up to 50 meters from where they are. So he could not only hear conversations, but they had been angled so that you could see inside the house. And I didn't have any of them on my phone.
And I
So
was, I remember telling you, get him off of that. Don't let him keep watching.
Mm.
I asked for the password after I spoke to Craig. I asked for the password and he said, I don't remember it. And I went, didn't you
And I was
install
like,
it last week? And I was like, hang on a second. Um, and yeah, when I got the password eventually, um, I went onto the footage and there is saved footage on there. And there was certain cameras that were aimed in the house that said the footage had been cleared. Um,
Mm.
so it wasn't like dodgy in my bathroom footage. It was just
yeah.
you could see into the lounge room a little bit, into my dining room where there's windows. And it's more just not really being able to handle not being able to know where I'm going or what I'm doing or who's coming over.
And honestly, it's a bit
Um,
stalkerish, especially if you have children.
yeah.
He's not just surveillancing you, he's
Well,
surveillancing
yeah.
little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the kids weren't there. It was,
Mm.
I had already told my family that I was breaking up with him and that I wanted to have a week where I could sort everything out and I didn't want them to be exposed to anything. So luckily, like I knew that, yeah, he knew that they weren't going to be home as well.
I
But
see.
it was like that. And it got to a point where I started like closing all the curtains and making sure that he couldn't see anything. And then we had a conversation, which was basically, unless you get therapy, we can't talk again. Like we can't have anything to do with each other. That was
Yeah.
like a couple of weeks prior to the fight and the breakup.
Because it had gotten to be a lot. It was very intense. It was,
Yeah.
there's kids involved,
Mhm.
and it was emotional, and he kept shutting down on you, and
That, and also he didn't celebrate any anniversaries, my birthday, nothing. Like he forgot my birthday. He
that's
fell
right.
asleep.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of things. And I went, I've literally thrown you a birthday party and done all this stuff for you. And on my birthday, he went to sleep. And it was just those kind of things. They hurt after time. And that wasn't the only occasion. There was so many different things where I went,
So catch us up to
yeah.
where you are around now. So what has happened since then? I imagine that the relationship continued. You start to
Yeah.
see more of these moments, where you had seen maybe his avoidance pop up. Where are you now?
Well, he got therapy. So he went and got therapy for himself, and he came back and said, I've had therapy. I have a lot of problems from my childhood that I need to work on. Obviously, these are the
Good
things
for
that
him.
trigger me. These are the things that trigger me. And I remember being like, I didn't even tell him about I was about to open my mouth and say, unless you have more therapy going forward, we can't talk. He'd already said it to me. So I went, oh, okay. And I just
Wow.
listened. And he was like, I obviously have all these issues I need to work through. He's like, these are the things that you do that really trigger me. And we worked on it and it got so much better. Like it was
Hmm.
significantly, I've not seen this person since the beginning. This is a different person. He loves on the kids. He sits at the table. He takes the kids out to the movies. He's like, texting me all day during work every day and like comes home, went out and bought me something the other day and said, this is for your birthday. I know I didn't have the money at the time, but I just wanted you to know I was thinking of you. Like he's really, even when he snaps at me, he'll go to work and he'll text me and say, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. I'm really sorry. And that is like, I know
Big
that might be
change.
the
That is
bare
a huge
minimum.
change.
Yeah, I know that might be the bare minimum for some people. Like I do have girlfriends that because of the other behavior, they're like, I don't care what he does. I hate him for life. I'm like, look, he's making an effort. That means something to me because I can see where he's come from and what he's choosing to do. And living with someone with that many kids is not easy either. And I'm very anxious.
Mhm. And therapy
So,
can be really effective for somebody who's willing. So
yes.
even if you're avoidant, a lot of people ask, is somebody going to be avoidant forever? Well, with the proper resources, with the proper support, those behaviors can change.
And the
Yeah.
desire,
Yeah.
I was going to say
the
the desire
desire.
changed either.
Hmm.
If somebody really wants it, they can do it. It's
Hmm.
just that a lot of people don't feel like they need to.
Yeah.
I don't know if also the time apart, even though it wasn't that long, was significant enough where he saw I could genuinely pack up all his stuff in one go and say, all good. So his parents, uh, my children refer to them as Nanny and Poppy, and I speak to his parents once every week. And he comes and sits and has a chat, and it's a lot better. He's definitely still avoidant. I'm definitely still anxious, but there is a lot more work that goes on now with communication, and it's made such a difference. And I have to be consciously working on myself because I can almost become a little bit narcissistic, controlling with my attachment. I've realized, like,
Anxiety makes us selfish.
Hmm.
yes, and so much so that it's like you're angry at yourself. It's the most confusing feeling, but you're like trying to tell them all this stuff, and then you spiral because you think, why did I do all of that? I'm so silly. And then you apologize, but then you also get angry because you're like, why should I have to apologize? And it just goes on and on and on and on. Oh, it's
But
awful.
but you're aware of it, and it's making a big difference for you.
Hmm.
Just being
Yeah.
aware of it.
I think it helps him as well because I can understand. It's not, before it was just about you need to change, you need to change. Now it's like, well, yes, you're broken. We're both clearly broken. But if you're willing to work on your stuff and listen to me, I also can hold myself accountable because I do, like, there is a lot that I need to work on. And obviously, I've got a lot of baggage from a lot of different relationships too. So, um, yeah, it's going all
So
right.
Victoria was wondering like how things are going for you now. What is life like with you guys now? What are you struggling with now?
Right now, I've gone through some pretty massive financial changes, which has caused a gigantic strain on our relationship. It's meant that he's had to work every week, every weekend for the last like couple months.
And I want
Um,
to jump in real quick, so because I know you want to leave that part vague, but let's just say I just want people to know that it was something completely out of your control.
yes, I can say that my whole life savings got stolen from me
Oh,
by a cyber attack. So it was very stressful. And all of that money came from my divorce that I'd put aside for my children and me to survive if things went wrong. So it was my safety net. And my partner has been incredibly understanding about it, but he's also applying for residency. We're moving house. We've both experienced some deaths in our families, and yeah, lots of different things. So that's
Wears you
just put a lot
down.
of pardon,
It
yeah,
it
lots of
wears people
stress,
down, you know,
wears people down, and
kids,
he,
finances,
mhm.
loss, grief, all of that keeps you
yeah,
from having the energy to keep that relationship going.
Right. And in terms of attachment style, it can kind of kick you to the extremes. If you're avoidant and you're dealing with that, a lot of times you go with your coping mechanism that you know, and you become very isolated. And if you're anxious, then that can make you highly anxious to be going through stress and grief and all of those
yes.
things.
And I think because also it was my money, even though it was my money that got lost, I still feel this responsibility of that was kind of what we wanted together for our future. So that hope of all the things we were planning, all the things we're looking forward to, I think we both felt like we'd come through a turbulent time. We'd made a choice to stick it out. We finally felt like there was some air. And then that happened. And he was like, he was good. He said, bear with me. I'm going to be working a lot now because, but that was his way of saying, I'm going to be struggling to not be distant right now. And I panic as well because I don't know
Mhm.
how to handle that very well. Like it's like being in your own house being isolated. It's so weird and awful. And I feel like I panic and think I don't want to go back there. Like that feeling was so horrible for 3 months. Um so yeah, it's been a bit tense. And unfortunately, we have had a fair few arguments just what the same sort of thing, like where he'll say we have this conversation all the time, and I'm like, but it's not being resolved. And he's definitely going backward steps, but at the same time he's knuckling down and he's working really hard and he's trying to be a support to me and my kids, and he doesn't resent me for the money loss, and he didn't panic when I told him that it was gone. And I do credit to him, he really does love me. But he has some kinks, and so do I. I don't know if kinks is the right word to use, but
It might be, depending upon what the way you mean
the relationship.
it.
But it can be so difficult when somebody who's, avoidant, you can see those efforts. And so there's enough reason to keep hanging on, but then you can still see that lack too. So it can be hard to make that decision to continue forward.
I was going to say that is the main concern that I have
Well,
Mhm.
at the
and the
moment.
other thing that I would be nervous about is that can he truly keep this up in the long run, right? If he's depressed, if he's stressed, will he run away again? And now my children are attached to him,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I'm a lot more attached to him. And I think that's probably the scariest part about this is, even if he loves me, will it be enough to make him stay when he's scared?
Yeah, and something that's important to think about is continual assessment, right? Because his progress in growth, in being more present with you, in remembering holidays and involving his family.
Birthdays, and there's a lot of them for him to remember.
Right. His progress in that, is that at any point matching your needs? I know sometimes people can get caught in relationships because they look at the potential, but here we have to do a continual assessment. Is there enough here to keep us going or not?
Yeah,
And
it's
you're
really
going to
critical.
have to self-soothe a bit too on the fear of, is it enough for him to stay? Can he work through it? If he gets scared, if he's feeling pressured, if you
Mhm.
know if you have an issue with some of the kids or even one of the kids, you're going to have to soothe yourself a bit, because if you panic and you get anxious and you spiral with him, it's going to make him more likely to run away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's true.
you
There's
know,
definitely other concerns. Is not only is he going to stay, but I think my natural inclination is to think that he will pull away and go to someone else while I'm with him, because I've been in situations in relationships where when it was stressful, that's what was actually happening and I didn't know. I don't think he's a cheater, but unfortunately, I'm broken and I've experienced it. So once you've experienced cheating, it doesn't leave your mind. It's
it's
very, very
traumatic.
hard.
It's
Yeah.
traumatic. And with
Yeah.
trauma, it can bring us back into the past, right?
Yeah. And my
Trauma,
father did
something that happened a
that
long
as
time
well.
ago, it feels like it's happening in the present moment when you're seeing, and sometimes it's not even a conscious thing. It could be a word or something that was said in an argument that was said in a previous argument. And now all of a sudden you're like almost in a flashback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely the main concern that I have is, yeah, is he gonna get tired of me because he sees everything as a burden? And um but that's when you're in a relationship. And a girlfriend said this to me. She said, when you're in a loving relationship, that's not how either of you should see the relationship. It's not a, you're not a burden, you're just a team, and it's happening to both of you. So I think my main thought behind it is, how do we both see it? Because he's definitely seeing his role right now as providing and looking after me, and I appreciate that. But I also want to know if he sees it as, there's not anything that could stop me from wanting to be with you. But then I'm also wondering, and this is a question to you guys, at what point in a relationship where you're living together do you guys talk about long term? Because we have talked about marriage and longevity of things, but we're not even at the 2 year mark. And probably one of the reasons why we've talked about it so early is because I have children and I need to know where things stand. But it makes it hard when you date because it fast forwards everything, and so you don't get a chance to process things at a normal rate. And so I don't know if I'm putting unfair amounts of pressure on him and asking him to tell me like where he's at and when we're going to know if he's going to stick around.
Let's pause there, because
Yeah,
that's a lot. You're going to overwhelm yourself with all those questions. That's a
yeah,
lot of things to thinking about one time. Um, there's a lot of uncertainty in life, okay? And there's a lot of uncertainty in relationships. And a lot of times when, even if you put pressure on somebody to know where they're at and how they see things, they're always going to be talking about in where they're coming from right now. So putting too much pressure on somebody to know where they think the future is, they're still going to be assessing it on how they're feeling in the moment. And if you just look at the divorce rate, it's over, 50%, it's like 60%. All of those people said, I want to spend my life with you. And at that time, they were certain they wanted to spend their life with that person. And 60% of those people aren't making it last, right? So with human beings, we talk a lot about where we're at. So it's scary, but the more secure that we get, that we can handle life no matter what happens, the less we put pressure on somebody for certainty when they're really only going to give us certainty based on how they're feeling or how they think they're going to be feeling.
And I can hear the anxious attachment in the underlying question of, is this person going to leave me, either for somebody else or because I pressure him too quickly into a commitment? And I want to reframe that a bit into the greater fear here being somebody who's very non-committal, staying with you for a very long time, or somebody who's unable to meet your needs, being in the picture for a long time and being just very passive. That to me is a much greater risk than him leaving with somebody else or him leaving because of too much pressure. So I want to frame it in a place to where you feel empowered to say, okay, well, how do I feel about our connection? Which is what I was saying with the continual assessment, right? We're never going to know 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, what things are going to look like. But you can have a rough timeline in your own mind. You can bring these things up to him, see how those conversation goes, and then observe.
it's true.
So I think what we're saying here is it's nice to feel like you might have some answers,
Mhm.
but always take that with a grain of salt in some ways, because people will tell you how they're feeling, but those feelings can change. So look at their behavior, just continually look at someone's behavior and their attitude and how they're showing up, and just silently observe. And if you need to address it, do so carefully. You don't want to overwhelm somebody because it can just make them shut down. But the better that you feel about how you can handle things with or without him, the less likely you're going to put pressure on somebody and actually make them want to run away. Because sometimes those conversations are so overwhelming for somebody, they just want to run away. But just
Yeah.
carefully saying, okay, well, I'm watching. And, as long as they seem to be on the same path with you, they're telling you, try not to put too much of a demand on what they might be thinking in the long term, because they may not know themselves. I mean, it's nice to have some answers, but don't get consumed by it, because people can be misleading. People might not tell you the full truth, and people's feelings change.
And I understand where you're coming from too with kids involved, because now the kids become more and more attached, and then that's a part of it too. So, it's important to know what it is that you want. And I'll say too, be open to the possibility that his progress and growth in becoming more emotionally available for you might not move at the same rate as, what your needs are, or even your patience or your tolerance. So
Yeah, that's true.
just consider that.
Absolutely. But it does sound like we've seen some improvements and
Right.
things have gotten better. And if you just continually think about, how can I take care of this relationship? How can I take care of myself? How are they showing up for me with their actions and their words? And just soothing yourself that it's a process and it will go up and down. People's interest level will go high and low, and they'll need space and they'll need closeness. And it's kind of an ebb and flow like the ocean, right? That it's kind of real calming to know that it's just part of a dynamic of a connection, that there will be times that the connection is stronger, sometimes where it's weaker. Sometimes people want closeness, sometimes they need to back off, they need some space, and not freak out or overreact if they need a little bit too much space.
Yes, that's really good advice. Thank you.
Well, hopefully this has been helpful to you. It was really great to have you on the show with us today.
Thank you for joining us.
No, it's been amazing. Thanks, guys. It's lovely speaking with you from Australia. Thanks for
Well,
staying up.
well, we appreciate you coming on, and maybe we'll get a future update from you.
Absolutely, 100%.